Mr. McGee, don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
You are about to listen to the Totally Super Awesome 80s Reboot Overdrive podcast.
This podcast is our fan tribute to the Incredible Hulk TV show. Be advised that has been exposed to radiation and we caution to listen at your own risk. You have now entered GammaCast.
And welcome to the GammaCast. I'm your host, Charlie, the Professor Esser. And with me, as always, is my skinny rich friend.
It's Mozz.
Hey, Mozz. Always glad to have you. Welcome to the Incredible Hulk Season 3, Episode 18. The Psychic. And, you know, this is a great episode because this is actually one of the very few times, this is the third time, because I'm counting, where we've had actual superpowers on the show. We had, of course, we had in The Disciple, we had sort of a kung fu ninja master, which isn't quite superpowers, but pretty close, you know. I mean, it was very much an Iron Fisty kind of thing. We had, of course, in The Brainchild, we had the super genius child. And here we get the most profound the most profound superpowers, aside from the Hulk, in this universe, which is really insanely accurate psychic powers, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Psychic, after meeting a kindred soul in Annie, a young psychic who learns his secret just by touching, David is devastated when the creature appears to have caused the death of a young man. He resolves to take drastic measures until Annie forces the death of Jack McGee, or foresees the death of Jack McGee. Written by Karen Harris, Jill Donner, George Arthur Bloom, directed by Barry Crane. Okay, this episode. So as I've said, what is most fascinating to me about this episode is that we get real superpowers. You know, I mean, a real, like, oh, wow, that isn't a person who's trained to be a ninja. That isn't someone who was just born super intelligent. This is someone with a power to see things beyond the realm of mortal kin. And that is really a first for this show. Because we've had brushes with the supernatural in the past several times.
But they always seem fake.
Well, yeah. Well, not only do they always seem fake, they've always been explicitly made fake. The closest we had, and again, it was a super science thing, was when we went to the quiet room, and we actually had sort of the MK Ultra experiments, you know, and that was a different thing. But you know, here we get some pretty amazing psychic powers. Let's see. This is first air date is February 22nd, 1980. So you know, so this is, I mean, and you know, for what it's worth, we're entering into the era of Carrie and the entire Stephen King unstoppable juggernaut of paranormal storytelling. So you know, it makes perfect sense. You know, so that's pretty awesome. So we open, and this is actually one of the most interesting things about this episode. We are opening up with the Hulk.
Right.
Unlike a lot of episodes, the Hulk is implicit right when we start. We open up and we're already in a Hulk phase, and that's different from our usual times. We open up, we're in San Francisco, and the Hulk is running down the street, and we get a very very shocking moment here because, of course, we're hearing the police band reporting the Hulk and seeing the Hulk, and when we actually run into the Hulk, when the cops catch the Hulk, there's a dead kid or a dying kid.
Yeah, okay, yeah, because I wasn't sure if he was dead right then.
No, he wasn't dead yet. No, because we're gonna have a whole thing where we go to the hospital and that comes into it.
Yeah.
But of course, David doesn't remember what happens to himself as the Hulk.
Right.
And
it was interesting for me. I thought, it's like I thought we were having like a Chris Nolan, or not a Chris Nolan, like a Ben Affleck Batman moment where he kills now.
Well, I had a feeling that it wasn't going to be because this is still 1980.
Yeah.
And you can't have the Hulk straight up murder a guy.
Yeah, and it was the first time he'd ever bloodied anyone,
Yeah, no. Well, but he's just over it. But of course, you know what it is, my friend. Big green man running down the street. He fits the description. And that is what it is. Is that people see the Hulk and they just assume monster,
right?
Not realizing that secretly he is a hero.
Hear his description from the APB. They just make him sound like a big guy, They didn't sound like it was a monster. Large fellow, rather large, green.
Yeah, well, they do say he's over 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
Which isn't true. Lou Ferrigno's actually I think he's like 6'2", 6'3". He's not 7 feet tall. But they do try to shoot him to seem bigger a lot of times. They say race indeterminate.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to say he was definitely colored, but the color we don't want to get into right now.
Right, they definitely want to be racist against Martians.
Yes, exactly. You never want to be racist against the Martians. Think of all the contributions to American society given to us by the Martians. The pyramids, Stonehenge.
And the objects on Saturn's moon, right?
Exactly. So, so they come through this, and of course the cop makes an immediate decision. He's going to help the guy, not go after the Hulk, and he calls the ambulance. The Hulk runs off. And then what's interesting here is, of course, David really doesn't know what happens when he becomes the Hulk. The Hulk seems to have some knowledge of what David was up to, but David, when he becomes back to David, just no real knowledge of what the Hulk storyline is. So, the Hulk is gone. David's back. He goes back to his job at the Green Grocer. Now he knows he became the Hulk, but to me this is actually a little more understandable than say in the not the confession episode, but the proof positive episode where he stuck around at the steel plant. In the steel plant, he knew he became the Hulk at the steel plant. This time he was the Hulk somewhere in San Francisco. Yes, he knows Jack McGee's probably coming, but truth be told, as far as he knows, the Hulk was not near any of the places he frequents. So as long as he can avoid Hulk locations in the city, he's okay. But of course, what happens is our young super powerful psychic happens to wander through, and I liked how her powers were, that they were again, much like David's, are tied to emotional distress. When she touches someone who is having an emotional distress, she gets these glimpses of what is going to happen. And
sort of interesting if you relate it to the cinematic Hulk, where he says, my secret's I always stay angry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and well, as we can see, and that's an interesting thing here too. I mean, we don't get a lot of the physics of her powers.
Right.
But the one other time we see her using her powers, they are directly related to the future, an immediate occurrence. When she touches David, she actually gets his past, his future, and a lot of data. And honestly, here's what I'm going to say. I don't recall him ever telling her his name was David.
Right.
you know.
Right.
And I'm like, I was trying to like go back and say, wait, did he say I'm David? You know, but I think she just pulled it out of there. Now, luckily, she never tells Jack McGee he's David.
Right.
You know, and I don't think he says he was David when she first knocks over the oranges, because of course what happens is she goes back to her hotel. Our sleazy landlord, who was that Johnny Wolf? Yeah, they don't have pictures of anyone here, so it's hard to tell exactly who everyone was, but I want to say that was him.
No, it's interesting. He makes, a very, very sleazy proposition to her, but he sort of does it in like the nicest way you possibly could.
Well, yeah, it's like, look, lady, I know you don't got the money.
I thought it was really interesting. Like he was a creep, but he was like, hey, trying to be like, he wanted it to be consensual,
Well,
and he was just like, hey, look, I'm not so bad, It's like, it wasn't. I don't know. I thought that was interesting.
Well, what the obvious point of it is that he's not actually. He's willing to let her stay there. Here's the thing. As I always say, every hooker's looking for the Richard Gere. Every John is looking for their pretty woman.
Right.
He's a sleaze, but he still wants to be loved.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to like just say, hey, here's what you're going to do if you want to stay here.
Yeah.
He's saying, look, if you want to stay here, I'm not a bad guy. I got some pull. I can make sure that happens.
Although, I mean, to me, that was like, hey, you know what? Do me a favor, I do you a favor. It won't be that bad. Look, I'm not a bad guy. It'll be fun. Let's both have some fun, and you could stay.
Yeah. Well, but of course, you always have what this woman needs to do is just sit down and watch the lottery with people, and
yeah,
But of course, we have these similar equivalents now, and of course, this is a very interesting thing too, because we see that she has a bottle of pills in her house, and as she's talking to the guy, and she's feeling very desperate, she's like, and she's sitting there, probably thinking, do I want to go? Do I want to have a place to live and be forced into a relationship, or do I want to just die?
Oh wait, but I didn't think that was a suicidal thing. I thought those were the pills she takes, that stop those visions that probably aren't, very fun to do. And when she turns around and sees the Hulk on the paper and she sees that vision, she's like, oh, I'm not crazy. That is what I saw. So I thought that those pills were like her antipsychotic pills or whatever that the doctors give her to stop.
Yeah, they were definitely some kind of antipsychotic. But the fact of the matter is, it was clearly written on the bottle, take one a day. And she did pour out a whole handful.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And she does mention it later when she's talking to David, when David has his moment of guilt.
Wow. Right.
Yeah, so, yeah. But then, because she really does think she's going insane. And, of course, this is always this thing, when people never... This is one of the things I loved in... If you ever see the film The 12 Monkeys...
Oh, yeah.
And there's this great thing about how crazy a time traveler would sound, and how easy it is for a time traveler to think he's insane. I mean, he's got all these weird memories, but they don't make any sense that he should have these memories.
Right.
And, and that's the reality of it, is that and here she is, she has these visions, but are these visions real? I mean, is she seeing something that's real, or is this just her mind telling her that she saw something? And, and when she sees something so outlandish as a Hulk, she thinks, that's it, I'm seeing monsters now, I've clearly gone around the bend. And it's time for me to just get out. But then she sees that the Hulk is a thing. And, of course, these landlords, who is, like, again, being real helpful. It's like, look, lady, you can get $10,000.
Yeah.
If you call on this guy. If you know who this person is, you can pay your back rent, and then we don't even have to have this conversation because clearly it was creeping you out. He's not a bad guy. He just wants to get laid.
No, he really wasn't.
He's I'm sure that he's he is the proverbial perv with the heart of gold. He doesn't want to force himself on anyone, but first thing he says when he meets you is, "So, Giovanna?" And it's like, Anyway, so of course she calls Jack McGee, says, "I know who this John Doe is. I know where we can find him." Yada yada yada. And she goes, of course, to the hospital because she sees that this poor kid is dying. And we get a nice thing with the surgeon talking to the mom, saying, it's touch and go. We're going to have to see if he pulls through or not. And, of course, then David comes to, and she sees David there. And then she calls Jack McGee's office again to say, "Hey, look, let him know he's at this hospital on this floor, But then she's falling asleep while she's drinking her coffee, and David comes and makes sure she doesn't spill coffee on herself. And, of course, that gives her another vision, and she sees that there is this emotional depth to David as well, and she decides she's going to help him, and she has to get him out of the hospital before Jack McGee comes.
Right. Now, what was those visions that she was seeing? Is that a storyline in his past that they've covered in the show?
Yeah. So the first thing you see the death of his first wife, which is basically what drove him on the path to become the Hulk. Is, him and his wife were driving, they got into a car accident. He's thrown clear because thank God he wasn't wearing his seatbelt. Because, those things kill more lives than they save. They say. At least in 1980, that's what they said. And he gets thrown clear, and then his wife is stuck in the car, and he's trying to lift the car to open the doors, but he can't open the doors, and she dies. And then he becomes obsessed with all these stories about moms who lift the cars off their children, who rip the doors off of things, all these people who get that moment of super strength to save someone's life. And he's like, why did I not love my wife enough to save the day? Why could I not do it? And that's what leads him to eventually study everything and come to this idea that it had to do with gamma rays from solar flares at the time. And that's what has him give himself an accidental overdose of gamma radiation. Honestly, for what it's worth, they really thought through the origin of this Hulk. I mean, they really went into minute details about this unique genetic structure that he had that when exposed to the excessive gamma radiation caused this other outcome that that this happened and this happened and this happened. They were really good about this. There's a lot of shows you watch nowadays that do not have that level. Legends of Tomorrow do not have that level of interest in actually having a plot that makes you go, oh yeah, I see how they're internally consistent.
Yeah.
So anyway, so you get that, and we get other times where he sees the other great love of his life, which was the season 2 premiere, which was called Marriage, where he meets another scientist who has a degenerative disease that just as they are, because she's trying to help him do biofeedback to control the Hulk, and he's trying to use what he's learned about the Hulk to help her degenerative autoimmune disease be cured. Because he realizes that that what happens to his cells are the exact opposite of what's happening to her cells, because her cells are just all decaying at a rapid rate, his are expanding at a rapid rate, and and they were just totally setting up a She-Hulk there, but they copped out at the last minute. Yeah.
That would have been so cool.
Yeah, although I tell you what, if I ever get to write a She-Hulk story with the Hulk in the MCU, I mean, I'm totally going back to that and having Jen Walters have that same degenerative autoimmune disease, and that Banner, played by Mark Ruffalo, realizes that it's his stuff is what can actually save her life, and that's the goal. Anyway,
Well, that and I don't know if, but back in the 70s or the 80s, I don't know if female bodybuilding had come along to the level where it's at now, where you could have had a believable She-Hulk.
Well, who they were going to have be She-Hulk?
Ooh,
Bridget Nielsen.
That was going to be my guess. Wow, that would have been interesting.
Yeah, you can if you go on YouTube, you can see like the makeup tests for her.
Really?
They were all set to do it, and then I don't know if it was during Death of the Incredible Hulk or if they were going to do one more movie after Death of the Incredible Hulk, and I think Bill Bixby died. Basically, is what happened. So they did Death of the Incredible Hulk, which was supposed to be the end, but then they were like, well, he is the Hulk. Maybe he can come back, and maybe we can do a story centering around a She-Hulk, and then Bill Bixby can just finally be rid of this nonsense, and we can just focus on a Jen Walters and a Bridget Nielsen thing and redo an entire expanded television MC universe. Because you got to remember, at that point they'd already introduced Thor into this universe. They had introduced Daredevil. They and then if you can even go back and you could actually start bringing back some of the old characters if you really wanted to do a She-Hulk series where you had the Brainchild come back and the Disciple come back and then this character come back, who I'm sure we never see again in an Incredible Hulk episode. That's the worst part about this show is they have all these great characters and they never ever come back. And part of me is
hopefully that'll be fodder for somebody to do something with later.
Yeah, well, that's always my dream in life is to write that fanfic of the McGee files, in which I actually get to look at all this stuff. Anyway, so what happens next is
she gets a vision about the guy bringing in the canisters of gas.
Well, yes. Oh man, yeah, we're still at that part of the film. Okay. And this, of course, is her proof to David that she has powers. So they really, and again, this really tight writing where almost immediately you get everybody presenting themselves, proving themselves. So there's not really we don't need a lot of exposition. We don't need psychic powers, such a thing could not exist. No, it's like, she's like, oh, that guy's going to blow himself up. And then she's like, get out of here, Jack McGee's coming. That guy's going to blow himself up. I got to try and do something. Of course, she doesn't really do anything, but then, of course, because she does that, David's still there. He turns into the Hulk, and he
ever
saves
the ultimate altruist,
Yes. Well, that's what's great about Bruce Banner. He does save the day, and so then they so now they're talking, and of course Jack McGee shows up. David goes to hide, and she's suddenly pushing Jack McGee away. And then again, to Jack McGee's credit, he's sitting there and he says, when you're a reporter, you get to be kind of a human polygraph. I know you're lying to me. I know you know what I'm looking for, and I know you're actively hiding it from me. And that's a great moment for Jack, It really is. Because he really is working to guilt this girl, because he knows she knows, and he's really working to guilt her into telling him what she knows. And honestly, I was so waiting for her to slip and say David. I don't know where David is, It's like, David, but, she never does, because that would give it away, And it's you're always in this moment where, come on. Let Jack know that David is associated with the story. Because you know that as soon as Jack hears the name David, he's going to start putting it all together. Yeah. That's the thing. It's I am leaning more and more towards the idea that Jack McGee might be a good reporter, but that he just isn't catching the breaks. He isn't getting the data he needs. Anyway, so Jack goes on. They find out that the kid has died. They all go to the funeral. And, of course, this starts David's spiral into, despair because he thinks the Hulk is killed.
Yeah.
And up until now, the Hulk is never actually killed, and it is his fear. It is what he lives in constant worry about.
Yeah.
And he runs off, and Annie touches Jack, sees that he's gonna die. She goes back to David and telling him, you can't kill it because he's about to jump off, and he says it's not a suicide, it's an execution. And you get this great thing where she's like, he's like, look, even if I do run away, Jack McGee is never going to let up.
Yeah.
And she tells him, Jack McGee's not going to be a problem anymore. And then again, the heroism of David.
Completely forgets about his own problems.
Yeah, he has to go make sure that Jack's okay.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think of that gun? Our other tough has.
What was that? I was wondering, and I got to do some research here. They must have had some crazy homemade guns back in the day. And what were the projectiles he was putting in them?
I think it's basically a real simple handmade flintlock. I think I believe that's actually something that is colloquially called a potato gun.
Ah.
And I do think it was something that, your occasional street tough would piece together. If you could not get an actual gun, especially if you were as they say, it's a gang of 6 people. It's
right.
They're not the Bloods. They're not the Crips. They're not even the Jets or the Sharks. These are guys that are really kind of putting it together piecemeal. And yeah,
the gang is going really well if one of the dudes is cleaning up a theater.
Honestly, he's probably the guy that he's probably he's on the. Given that he accidentally killed one of their own team, he's probably he's probably only there because he's the guy that actually has a job,
Right.
But yeah, so he goes to shoot Jack McGee with his little potato gun. Jack McGee, I guess, gets winged, but he's not dead. And of course, David is there, and David gets shot. And of course, you never want to shoot David Banner because that just makes him angry.
Yeah.
So we get a great Hulk out. We get our third Hulk out of the episode. And like I said, I think this is the first time we get 3 Hulk outs in an episode, which is great.
Wow.
And he goes and he takes care of the situation. And of course, we get revealed to us at this point that no, David did not kill the kid.
Right.
The other gang member did.
Jack McGee's power is doing some good.
Yeah, well, Jack McGee often does good. Jack McGee often unearths the scandal that David has been trying to do battle with,
Mm-hmm.
Jack McGee often serves as the law enforcement arm that, a Hulk can't, that basically the world is corrupt and no one can save the day until Jack McGee comes up because he is the 5th estate. And you gotta remember, this is early 80s. This was, Watergate was still fresh in our minds. This was when reporters were seen as the great heroes of American history because they were the ones who could unearth corruption and bring a presidency to its knees.
Right.
Remember those days?
Yeah. Well, I just saw Snowden yesterday, so we're going through a resurgence of something like that now, even still.
Well, I'll tell you, man, I have never seen this. Here's what I've said it before, I'll say it again, and to you conservatives listening, and actually, no, not to you conservatives listening, because I still count myself among conservatives. To you radicals listening, Trump is right. He is making America great again, but not the way he intended. He is making America great again by uniting people in utter flabbergastedness at his criminality and idiocy. And
right.
Honestly, just to go all political for 5 seconds here, I almost want him to serve 4 full years, because I think that the second he's not sitting there throwing feces at the wall, I think it's going to take away from the energy in the world. as long as it's just feces he's throwing, I think we're okay. But we're going to have to see.
Right, and you're right. He is sort of giving the entire country a lesson on how our government works so that we can all be a bit more informed of its mechanisms and how we can affect them. And we're learning a lot of that now.
And to some extent, I think giving us more pride in it, because we realize that there are checks and balances. That even people that are generally speaking, quote unquote, what people would say is, oh, those people are just corrupt. They're like, well, as Star-Lord said in Guardians of the Galaxy, I may be a jerk, but I'm not 100% a jerk, just to make it family friendly here. And that's the truth of it. Is like, even people that are like, when I'm sitting there saying, yeah, Dick Cheney, you be the voice of reason. Something has gone horribly, horribly wrong in the universe, or something has gone horribly, horribly right.
Yeah.
And for what it's worth, in comic book fashion, that's always the way. There's always villains, but, those villains, they have a code of ethics. It's like, it's all right to be a villain, but you can only be a villain if you're going to be a villain who is going to say, okay, here are the rules of our villainy.
Right.
And we're going to operate within that villainy. And then you get some guy, then you get a freaking Joker showing up.
Right.
And everyone's like, dude.
Super villains.
Yeah, well, it's like, that's not the way we do things here, And maybe even Joker's the bad example, because I actually think Joker is very lawful evil. So I think Joker is bound by his own insanities to always, as Roger Rabbit would say, he can do it, but only when it's funny,
Right.
He can't just go and murder someone because where's the gag in that? Anyway,
By the way, they're doing a great job of the Joker in the new Gotham show.
Oh, I am like 3 shows behind in that. I'm like seeing it, and honestly, that actor who's playing the Joker, he is so good. He is great. I loved him on Shameless. I will say he is my favorite ginger actor right now. Sorry, Scarlett Johansson. But he is, I've seen clips of him, and I know he's doing fantastic, and I can't wait to get back to. As soon as I can get 3 hours to catch up on the last 3 weeks episodes, I am gonna watch those.
No, it's quite good.
Anyway,
quite good.
So a little bit of backtrack here. We did find out that the reason she stopped being studying with this parapsychologist in New York by the name of Dr. Faulkner was because she misread a vision, and this kid who she thought was in a cave was actually in a sewer, and so she sent them in the wrong direction, so she ran away. And now, of course, at the end of this, she decides she's going to go back to Dr. Faulkner to sort of X-Man out and sort of work on her psychic powers to become a true force for good. And really, for what it's worth, she is very much a superhero. And again, one of these great characters that they never went back to and just really missed out on something that could have been really amazing for the storyline. But then cue Lonely Man music. Everyone gets on a bus.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts on the episode, Mozz?
I thought this was an exceptional episode. It wasn't, an episode that was an excuse for Hulk, and it wasn't a story-heavy episode that didn't need the Hulk. Those two things were intertwined so well that the Hulk served a purpose beyond just being, the Deus Ex Machina fixing everything, It was a really, really well put together episode.
No, I mean 100% without a doubt. I actually think this is probably one of my, and this is one of these great moments where I had no memories of this episode before.
Mm.
So this is one of the ones where I did not have like a preconceived thought where I was like, oh yeah, that sounds like fun. That's going to be great. I'd never seen this one before. Or I probably had seen it, but I didn't remember it. And I'm coming out of it, and I'm like, this is probably one of my favorite episodes so far. This was such a well-written episode, so, very big thumbs up. Okay, Mozz, if people want to reach out to you, talk to you about any of the things that we talk about, where can they reach you?
They can email me at mozzmanzor@gmail.com. That's MOZZMANZOOR. You can find me on Facebook under that also.
Okay, awesome. And of course, you can always follow me on Twitter as I live tweet The Incredible Hulk, which I'm able to do again, as well as Legends of Tomorrow, and which I'm not doing tonight because they moved it to Tuesdays, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I will do later tonight because we are doing this on Tuesday, and lots of other things, including Powerless, which I'm not going to do tonight because it's Tuesday. Tuesday's a busy night for me now. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to follow me on Twitter, that's Charlie Esser. That's at Charlie Esser. That's CharlieEesser. Look for the two E's in the middle for quality. And of course, write to me in that old-fashioned email way at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, at gmail.com. And ladies and gentlemen, that's the whole episode tonight. We're going to do more next week. We're going to keep on doing this until they run out of episodes on Hulu or something. And then we'll see what we can do next. Thank you for hulking out with us. Please hulk out with us again. Good night.
We hope you've enjoyed this show. This podcast is part of the 80s Reboot Overdrive channel on Southgate Media Group. You can follow us on Facebook on the 80s Reboot group page. We're also on Twitter and Tumblr at 80s Reboot. We invite you to check out all the wonderful podcasts and blogs available at southgatemediagroup.com. And thank you for reliving the 80s.